Hi, I'm so excited to be able to talk to Brent Simon about his new book, The Dreamer's Path, Twin Peaks, and David Lynch, the actor, which is so beautiful right here, doing a Vanna White. So gorgeous. The cover is so gorgeous. It's filled with beautiful, beautiful pictures. And Brent, you have such a huge, like, beautiful, long career interviewing amazing people. A lot of these incredible interviews are in this book. You've been working in entertainment industry forever. You're an incredible writer, but this is just me hyping you and also appreciating you. But please, yeah, introduce yourself. And I'm so excited to get to talk to you about your book today.
Oh, thank you so much, Em. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm an entertainment journalist for longer than I'd care to admit. But as I sort of point out or toss off in one part of the book, back when free print alt weeklies were a thing, like when that was a viable business model, I was editor-in-chief of a free weekly out here in Los Angeles, and that was a great training ground for me when I was really first kind of starting out my career, just because I could vacuum up every sort of film and TV show and
Mm.
even concerts and stuff like that, consume it all, write about it critically, interview folks. That really, let me cut my teeth at a too young age, I'll probably admit. I was tr enormously privileged. And so I've written for, dozens of publications, both domestically and internationally.
Internationally.
And I find that really interesting. And that has been helpful to me because you sort of learn to tweak your language as you write for different audiences. And so, I love still learning about stuff. That's why I'm an entertainment journalist. When I went to college at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, I knew as I studied, took a couple journalism classes, I was like, this is really interesting. And yet I don't want to cover city council meetings, right? So, um,
Right.
there
What do
was
I care about? What do I actually feel excited to be writing about? Mhm.
exactly. And then, like as a, teenager, you're like, wait a second, I can get free CDs and free concert and tickets and movie tickets if I write about them. Oh, this is fantastic. This
Life
is the life.
hack. Hmm.
So that was kind of, the beginning of my path. And then it's continued as media has contracted and really struggled, and particularly kind of arts and entertainment journalism. It's a tough racket, but it's something I love because of the variety that it offers. And if you have a curiosity about the world and art and the way that those intersect with society and modernity and where we're going, there's not a better racket in the world.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, absolutely. And um, I want to talk to you about this book and why here we are, let's see, a year after David's passing, that we're sort of talking about this book and looking at this book. Also, just to like backtrack for a second, today is a very special day. Today is Lunar New Year. This is such good energy. It's Lunar New Year. It's a solar eclipse, and it's the beginning of the year of the horse, which is like fire and passion and truth telling and like clarity. And I just feel like this is a very exciting like day, particularly to be talking to you about this incredible work that you did. And not that long after, we're at this commemorative part of honoring David's life. I feel like this is a really cool convergence of moment to be able to look at his art and the legacy of his art and his work, and maybe how it creates and invokes continually fire and passion within us. You certainly through this book, and maybe all of it, a lot of us in the community, as we're making art about his art that has inspired us so deeply. So I just want to like backtrack on that and say that for a second.
That's beautifully stated. I mean, I didn't know about
Yeah,
the year of the horse element, but you're right. There's so
horse
many
year.
kind of anniversaries in January and then certainly into February
That's
associated
right.
with David Lynch, his birthday, unfortunately his passing, and then Twin Peaks and other things. And you're
Yeah.
right. I mean that there is such a passion in his work, and I think that's part of what draws people to it. And specifically, as I kind of touch on and towards the end of the book, I can't think of another artist who inspired so many other people to pursue their own artistic passions. He was always promulgating the art life, find your own voice, be true, be authentic to
Hmm.
that. And
Hmm.
that's such a beautiful thing. I think that's something that the fan community for Twin Peaks and David Lynch, really respond to. And it's a self-reinforcing loop, right? Because people they share the thing that they're passionate about.
That's
Other
right.
people recognize that, they share theirs, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the fire horse. And I just feel like the element of fire is so important and throughout his work and the fire that it invokes in us and the passion and the energy. It's really fun and exciting. And you're right. It's also on the convergence of Twin Peaks Day, which is happening like literally in a few days. You're going to be there signing these incredible books. Hello, add to cart, go there, meet Brent, have him sign your books. I wish I was going. I would totally bring this and have you sign it and do all the things, but I get to talk to you anyway, which is very special. So okay, I have a very important, very serious question to start with for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
How much quinoa did you create and consume during the writing of this book?
It's a great question. They say it's the only perfect grain. So I did, couscous as well, but quinoa is a great staple for anyone out there. It's a way to, throw a tremendously filling and nutritious element into kind of any meal. So definitely a good amount. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Should I measure it in cups or meals? But a lot. Yeah.
I mean, legit quinoa is delicious. So is couscous. Like, legitimately, I'm on
Yes.
board with that. But, your book reminded me, I was like, oh my God, right. That quinoa video. Where is that? Let me see if I can find that. And then I watched it
Right.
like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had that experience over and over again in your book where I was like, oh, right. Early 2000, oh right, mid 2000 thing. I kind of remember that. Can I find that? Can I read about it? And and that's such a really cool part of this book you've constructed, which is a beautiful oral history, an incredible encyclopedia, and also your very brilliant analytical mind around looking at key concepts and themes that emerge throughout his work, but also his performance in all of these different ways that he's performing and acting, whether it's maybe in an interview or a commercial or as Gordon Cole, for example. So there's such a beautiful convergence of all of those things in the dreamer's path.
That touches my heart, because yeah, that's
It's
that's
true.
that's so beautiful. The way you put that, I really appreciate your all your kindness there because it was, the idea for the book was substantively born from Twin Peaks,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly, season three. I was fascinated by the idea or the manner in which rather season three of Twin Peaks embraced the concept of time passing. We see Gordon Cole, and certainly, at the beginning, we didn't know how integral a part of the story he was.
Mm-hmm.
As that season concluded, I was really fascinated by that, and I've, had the good fortune to interview David Lynch many times over the years, written about him,
Yeah.
and yet something longer form was always super intimidating, right? Because I've never been like the fan theory guy. Like I love his work so much, and it's put me on the path to where I am today. But decoding, Twin Peaks or Mulholland
Uh-huh.
Drive is, which many people have done so beautifully and engagingly. Like that's just not my forte.
That's not you. Mm.
No, and so I had this idea of, it was born of Gordon Cole, but then I had seen Zelly and Me, and um, you know, really had responded to that at the time, and I revisited it, and I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. And so as I began to kind of think about performance more, I was like, I realized there was a story to be told there
Mm-hmm.
about the manner
Yes.
in which he sort of dipped in and out of performance over the years. And yeah, I tried to sort of tell that story and, like you said, be really super comprehensive about it, while still having some fun, because it was always an idea that to me was both serious and really amusing.
Oh yeah. Well, and you talk that's fabulous. And you talk about the humor. There's so much like humor in so many of his roles. I mean, even Cole is hilarious. He's hilarious, you know? And so the performances offer that. And also, your writing is not, there's no moment of like, oh, I'm slogging through this commercial that I'd never seen and I don't know about. No, the way you're writing it is like so cool. You're like, and then this happened, and then he chose to do this, and then here's some behind the scenes elements of what was happening around this, and perhaps what informed how he was performing or showing up in this particular way. That's cool. That's exciting for me. And I never felt like, even though, so I'm a fan, but there's a lot of things that you cover in this book that I've never seen before. So at first I was a little worried, like, oh, I've never seen Dumbland. Oh man, like, am I gonna get this? Is it gonna? And I know like there are super fans out there who are listening to this and they're like, what the fuck? You've never seen Dumbland? And I respect that. But I think there's also a lot of us who just haven't had access to see a lot of this work. But the way you cover it in the book, it's okay that I haven't seen it
Mm.
because you give us enough context without giving away the secrets and the mysteries. So I felt like I was along for the ride, even if I wasn't an expert in whatever it was that you were covering.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of like the needle that I was attempting to thread sometimes of being aware that certain media of his was difficult to track down,
Hmm.
and certainly in certain countries or areas, territories, but also even in the United States. And yes, wanting for both some of those kind of curios from his website days, but also something like the Cleveland show. It's like to me, it was tremendously fun to sort of unpack like the episodic recaps of that.
Hmm.
It's like wanting to give a taste of the context, but
Yeah.
not bore people. And then, like you said, as as those puzzle pieces kind of fit together chronologically, you come to realize. Um, some interesting relationships, right, between things that were going on in his life and his
Yeah.
creative life,
That's right.
and with films or TV shows that he was working on or fine art, and then how that fit with kind of other elements of performance. So um, it was a it was a delicate sort of wire to walk at times, and I don't think I did too much overwriting, but I'm glad to hear that it landed in a way that it was intended, where some of the chapters or some of the kind of titles do receive a little bit of an oral history and then other things, you want to give enough of a synopsis where people get it, but you also don't want to like hammer it completely out.
No, no, you didn't overdo any of that. It provided a container in which I could understand whatever was flowing next. One of the funniest, one of the funniest things that I did not know about is the Barbie coffee commercial. And maybe a lot of fans know this because oh right, because you read about it. It comes back in with the Barbie movie, and everyone's like, "Oh right, this Barbie thing," and oops, we're in trouble for using Barbie. But uh, yeah, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about that because I just watching it from reading your book, I was just like, this is just genius in all the weird, crazy ways that I love Lynch. Yeah,
Right.
could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was a time, and I think most people know or have some sense at least that David Lynch had a branded signature cup coffee line,
Hmm.
right? And so, which makes total sense. But it's also hilarious because Twin Peaks was this bright burning star, and yet it was very merchandised,
Hmm.
surprisingly for a show that I don't think anyone thought was going to hit the zeitgeist quite the way it did. So after that, for a number of years, he had this coffee line, and then one of the things he decided to do was make a commercial for it, interacting with a Barbie doll whose head he cradles slash squeezes,
Total
and
squeezing. Yeah.
right, a lot of squeezing, and it is not well received by the lawyers for Mattel, to say the least. And Sabrina Sutherland, who is of course was David's producer on Twin Peaks season three and worked with him so intimately on other projects, kind of over the last 10 to 15 years of his life. She admits or says he really wanted to do more with this Barbie doll. Like he enjoyed kind of performing with it. And that first commercial that he does is kind of this meet cute, right? Between an unnamed female character who's embodied by the Barbie and sort of like an air quote David Lynch, who's like tremendously popular. There's people off screen shrieking, that there's going to be people are going to get trampled at an autograph event that he has and all this. Um, the law, the cease and desist letter comes from Mattel. That sort of, puts the brakes on any future plans he has to kind of do these little voiceover commercials with Barbie, and yet he returns to it in a form a couple of years later with an acceptance speech that he kind of filmed for the Tribeca, an award that was granted by the Tribeca um, Film Festival, and that was an interesting. It was interesting to me to see, okay, here's an idea that he has and something that really he connects to in a performative way. And um, he doesn't give up on it. He doesn't
Mm,
discard it totally.
mm,
And there was something illuminating about that to me because I think we see that in Twin Peaks season 3 as well, where all of these things from so many different paths in his creative life come flooding back and are kind of um, I wouldn't even say ornamentally arranged within Twin Peaks. I,
mm,
I think they're kind of like integral to the whole, but it's the way in which he incorporates fine art, um,
mhm.
music, everything, even dating back to and coming before Eraserhead. There's bits and pieces of that in Twin Peaks,
Cool.
and so we see a little bit of that same inclination in his embrace of the Barbie dolls. And it's interesting to think about why he so responded to them. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think the timeline, if I'm getting it right in my mind, is that certainly with the Tribeca one, this is around the time that he and Mark Frost would have been kind of writing season 3 of Twin Peaks. And
Mm,
so it's what we see of Gordon Cole in season 3, really putting his status as a ladies' man on Front Street.
mhm, mhm.
It's interesting to think about, these Barbie shorts, particularly the latter one, really embodying that as well.
But thank you for saying all that. And that's exactly the kind of context and container with which you're kind of analyzing and thinking through all of these things, in addition to kind of the materialism of trying to sell something like like coffee and selling Barbies. And it's like there's just like a lot of commentary and like commodification, and you take it to like a systems level, but not in a boring academic way that like no one wants to read. It's all very accessible and fun and interesting and cute and also thoughtful and considered, which I love. And what you were just saying about bringing things back around, it made me think about times in the book where you talk about repetition
Mhm.
and the repetition, of course, of like, going to Bob's Big Boy, but also kind of like routine, like routine, the quinoa as a routine for a while, or coffee as a routine, and structure and form in art making. It also kind of made me think about TM and the sort of like having meditation be part of routine and structure as part of the art process, and the mantra as being something that's repeated and repetition. I wondered if you would want to talk a little bit about that in terms of the take on Lynch's performance life, but also like in your own creative artistic career, how repetition and structure, what that means for you.
Yeah, I think that's such a big part of, uh, was a big part of Lynch's creative process.
Mm-hmm.
He's talked about that. That's something like I've probably struggled with. It doesn't come as natural to me. And maybe, some of the ups and downs of kind of my career, like, when you're freelancing and not on staff at a place, or even when you are, your day to day can vary so much depending on kind of,
Mm-hmm.
are you pulled to screenings? Are you on a set visit? Are you doing interviews? Um, and, but I absolutely recognize like the tremendous benefits that come with, as you say, structure, repetition, mantras, like centering your mind in a way that eliminates all the noise of the outside world. You're trying to find the signal, right? The signal
Hmm.
over the noise. And I think that is part of the brilliance of David's art. That's what people respond to. And I think a lot of us struggle with finding that or holding on to it, maybe,
Hmm.
because we think um, we have to respond to everything in the world. We have to engage with it. And as I've gotten a little bit older, I've come to recognize that I think the human brain is an incredible thing, and yet it's also very fragile. And like we're not designed, particularly in my view at least, for just the constant, unending stream of news from the internet and from social media.
100%.
It's very easy to get torn asunder and kind of pulled apart by that.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's something that I think, David was tremendously good at managing. And even at a time before social media existed, right? Like he embraced these routines because he realized that was what allowed him to dive deeper
Yes.
and get, as he would call it, like the big fish that he was
Hmm.
not the surface idea. Okay, I have a surface idea or two, and then I connect them. But what is deeper? What's underneath it? Why am I having these ideas? Um, and he sort of intuitively understood that at a very young age, which is pretty pretty rare, I think.
Hmm.
It's a deep wisdom that, I think a lot of us it takes us many more years to come to that realization.
Yeah, I think I love everything you just said. I think it's definitely a spiritual journey and a spiritual like set of practices. Whether or not it's tied to any religion or that's not it. It's a spirit, it's a soul practice connected to living the art life, right? It's like that feels really true. And um, it's something that I also I am also trying to figure out in a world that's pulling us in all these different directions. And that is, we're experiencing so much collective trauma all the time, particularly right in this moment. And so coming back to spiritual practice and soul practice and trying to centralize art making as much as possible is really important. And you did this with this book. So tell us like what the process was for putting this all together and how did you how long did it take you? How did you do this? This is a lot. You put a lot together in a great way, but this is a lot of people, a lot of coverage. Like, how did you do this?
It is, you're right, it's a lot of work. I had the idea probably in maybe even 2022, but then uh I got serious about it in 2023.
Hmm.
And so that's the first interviews were done for it in 2023. Um because I wanted to be very comprehensive and cover the things, yes, it's Gordon Cole and Twin Peaks, and people know the Fablemans and some of these other Lynch performances, but I really wanted to exhaustively chronicle everything. And of course, that can be intimidating, but I got in my head, well, I'll talk to the people that are his screen partners, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and there's wonderful folks with whom he had very long and fruitful, creative partnerships and relationships, but they didn't really interact in that way. So, and even some that did, um, when I was out trying to get an interview with them, it was like, well, absolutely, Mulholland Drive is incredible, but I would really love to talk to Naomi Watts. Not about that, but um, about Thank You, Judge, the music video in which she appears with, David Lynch as masked Billy the Groper. And the publicist is like, okay, well, that's interesting. So, to your question, it was sort of like,
Yeah.
okay, once I got the frame for, I had the idea for the book and the frame, and like, let me chase down these people. Um, the kind of real work substantively began in 2024, and but of course was sort of interrupted quite tragically by David's passing
Yeah.
in January of 2025.
Hmm.
And, there were I was in this limbo where there were people, a lot of interviews were already done. There were people I had contacted before his passing, and then there were people that I hadn't contacted yet because I was
Uh-huh.
trying very intentionally to sort of build the book in a certain way. And of course, I was cognizant of the fact that I didn't want to look like a vulture, right? Like right
Yeah.
after his passing, and kind of
Right. Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
so that complicated things and
Hmm.
maybe shifted the timeline a little bit. But yeah, I ended up talking to 70 plus people. I think
Wow.
60 over 60 are quoted in the book. Just a few on background, but most people were, beautifully candid and kind of sharing their thoughts. And again, um, it it also spans time though from before his passing to after his passing. And some people I went back and reconnected with
Hmm.
um, to talk about legacy and stuff like that. But it was lots of interviews, and then an interesting experience also, kind of dipping in and out of different time periods because
Hmm.
the interviews continued as I was writing as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting in the 60s, basically, right? The 60s and the 70s, and then taking us all the way up to now. It's a huge, again, like a huge span. Brent, if you're comfortable with sharing, like, what were some of your fave interviews? Like, who were you like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm getting so much information. Or like, oh my gosh, I've never talked to this person. This person hasn't been interviewed very much before. This is so cool. I get to talk to them and learn these behind the scenes things. Like, yeah, tell us some of
Yeah,
your faves.
sure. It was affecting talking to some family members of David's.
Yeah.
Peggy Reevy, his first wife,
Hmm.
and his daughter Jennifer,
Hmm.
both of whom I spoke to after David's passing.
Uh-huh.
Um, they were really generous with their time and incredibly candid.
Hmm.
And in particular, kind of those conversations with Jennifer, um, they were very emotional.
Yeah.
She loved her dad so much, still loves him, obviously. And, their relationship was a very special and unique one. And she was vulnerable and comfortable sharing that vulnerability, which really, I can't thank her enough for. I can never repay that kindness. And it was emotional to me as well. Um, and then, other folks, uh, it was really a joy talking to like Mike Henry about the Cleveland show, um, which was, I think he was a little surprised and kind of like how granular, I wanted to be in some of my questions, in a pleasant way. That was a lovely conversation and experience. Um, I believe, you've had intersection with Harley Payton previously,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
yeah, Twin Peaks writer and producer, and he's fantastic. Just gold spills forth from his mouth kind of every time we talk,
100%.
and he's very candid in a way that
Hmm.
I really appreciated because I think that, there's an instinct amongst some folks who worked with David to kind of perhaps try to lionize or protect him.
Yeah.
And I don't think he needs that. I think the beauty of him and what makes his art and him, both his art and him, so incredibly special, is the fact that he was very human. And
Yes.
um, and so the way in which Harley Payton talks about, like, this incredible friction he had on a personal level with David Lynch, while just in super eloquent fashion talking about his genius and all the things
Hmm.
he thinks about his work, is to me, fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And then I also really loved, even though it was a lot of work kind of tracking down some folks, but there's some international films. There's a couple Brazilian shorts, and there's a Russian film that David appeared in, right? And so talking to those filmmakers was incredibly wonderful because, and I mentioned this in the book, you know, David Lynch is rightfully thought of as this very American filmmaker, that
Hmm.
his work is commenting upon, certainly the dating back to Blue Velvet, right? Like the sticky sap underneath the surface of
Yeah.
the perfect,
Yeah, the underworld.
suburbia.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
shadows and the underworld, totally.
And so to have these international filmmakers um, talk about how his work influenced their creative lives was really fascinating. You
Mm.
know, and their perspectives were that was something that that I enjoyed, and that spilled over into some of the other chapters as well that talk about some other things other than those specific films.
And it's so amazing to have all of this in one place. This is like, it feels so containing to me. I'm like, oh, right, this is my like sweet little encyclopedia with all of these things that are covered in one place instead of just in an article here or something that's hard to find there or like one book chapter over here. It's just nice that you put it all together and with your expertise of being able to have access to people and interviewing them to get the information that then helps inform the storytelling and also your analysis of it. Just so fun and so cool.
Oh, well,
Um,
thank you so much.
yeah, it's true. Okay, can you tell us anything about Isabella Rossellini?
She is a beautiful spirit.
Mhm,
That interview was conducted via Zoom.
mhm.
Um, I have met and interviewed her before, kind of a long time ago, but I believe she was in New York at the time. I am based in Los Angeles, so again, I should have said, some of these interviews were conducted in person, some over Zoom, some via phone, and a few, I think, via email.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, she was great. She knit during our interview. She was
Love
like,
that.
I need to do something with my hands. I was like, by all means.
Love her.
Uh,
Mhm.
so that was beautiful. But yeah, she was very giving with her time. And again, that was a fun chapter to write, the Zelly and Me chapter.
Mhm.
And in fact, Tina Rathborn, the writer-director, that was the first interview that I did for the book back in
Oh, cool.
2023.
Oh, cool.
And so I think that film it's a really kind of little overlooked gem and underappreciated and I think she was happy to talk about it because I know she and Tina are still friends.
Mm.
But it's something that Tina really beats herself up for and doesn't give herself full credit for.
Mm.
So those interviews in tandem were beautiful. Tina, I talked to for 3+ hours in person, and then Isabella was knitting over Zoom.
That's so great. And it is something that I feel like is not covered as much this movie. So I think it's also wonderful that you included it. My favorite part of your book, which is no surprise for anyone who knows me at all, is the fact that you, of course, you're covering The Return, Twin Peaks and The Return and all these things I love. But you have a specific your chapters are really based on the films or the art pieces, right? That's what they're called. But you have a specific chapter that's called Fix Your Hearts or something, Fix Your Heart something. And I want to just take us there for a moment because, yeah, Fix Your Hearts or Die is what it's called, chapter 41. I want to take us there for a moment because what you are doing in this chapter, number one, so I'm like hyping you because this is amazing. Number one, you're positioning yourself and all of your identities in writing this chapter. Like, this is who I am. I'm a white, straight guy or whatever. Like, I don't have the experience of Denise in the world. And what is happening in 2017 with Trump and with what's going on in the world, and then what's going on in the world now, the messaging, the sort of the answer to like collective transphobia that is being espoused and like co-signed by the administration and what's happening politically right now is very important. The Fix Your Hearts moment is very, very important. And I think Denise, I could say, I could write a dissertation on Denise Bryson. So we're not doing that right now but what happened when she was originally in the series and then now her development is gorgeous and it's gorgeously written. And, you talk about Lynch's portrayal as Cole as just being like a very honest portrayal, right? Like when she's talking about hormones, and he's just like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. That's ladies' business. I don't want to, like a very real. So it's not just like a sort of a fantastical unicorn fake version of this experience as a woman who's whatever. Is she the head of the FBI? I don't even know what she is. She the head, like head,
The director of communications, I believe, or
the
deputy
director of
director.
that's too like, oh my goodness, she must be so busy and stressed out. Anyway, it's not just this like unicorn version, it's a very real version. And I love that. And I'm taking us to page 223. Everyone follow along. Because so I wanted to just say thank you for naming all of the ways that you come to this writing about this part, and also that you included this beautiful part from Jennifer Lynch about body dysmorphia and kind of her experiences in the world. And I'm just going to read I'm going to read just a moment of it from what she says, what Jen Lynch says. My father and I both had things about our bodies that were either visibly broken or wrong. So we understood hating a body that we were in or thinking less of it, said Jen Lynch. And we weren't and yet we weren't ridiculed for it. I'll tell you that I had a best friend and was married to a trans person. And it is because of Gordon, I think, that my ex partner was able to exist more comfortably in the world, knowing that the man who made Eraserhead, their favorite movie, also said, fix your hearts or die. So dad knew that what he was saying was the clearest version of it is not on these people to feel bad, it is on you to understand. Mic drop. Jen Lynch, oh my goodness, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then she goes on to talk about having her own experience with some body dysmorphia and some things with her foot and having a club foot, and also Lynch having some issues with his foot, and so how they kind of move through the world with these quote unquote deformities, which are just different versions of bodies in the world, but that can create a sense of disconnection from body and mind and spirit, and how all of that got worked into both the writing and also the performance. And that you and Jen are talking about the legacy and the importance of bringing this particular set of experiences and highlighting them in the work. So I know that was a very long monologue that I just went on, but I wanted to just really highlight that part of the book for me that had me crying. I read it to my partner this morning. They were crying. Like we were like it's so beautiful, and so thank you for including it. And yeah, I just want to offer space if you wanted to comment on it or add in anything. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, it makes me emotional talking about it, and that was, I don't think that's kind of information that is really out there, has been shared that much. And so again, I have such an enormous gratitude to Jen for feeling comfortable sharing that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and the conversations I had with her. And it was I out from the jump, I knew that I wanted Fix Your Hearts or Die, or slash Fix Their Hearts or Die to be its own chapter, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to try to unpack, okay, the importance of that within the show, within the media itself, in season 3 of Twin Peaks, but also how more broadly it has been embraced as a rallying cry. Yes,
Absolutely.
by the trans community, but by allies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, as I mentioned in the book, like I literally gasped when I saw it for the first time
Yeah.
in 2017, because it resonated so deeply with me. And yes, I'm a straight white guy, who hasn't faced, all these incredible challenges that many other marginalized groups have. And yet it spoke in a really, yeah, simple, clear way to like this anger, that I felt about a lot of injustice,
Oh,
in the world.
yeah.
And it still does. Like it still gets me. But that was always something that I knew I wanted to address separately. But man, it wouldn't have been anywhere near what it was without, those stories that Jen shared, which I think make clear that they make abundantly clear kind of just what a beautiful person David Lynch was, the humanity
Mhm.
within
Yeah,
him. But it also makes the point like you don't have to be someone who is in a marginalized or demonized group to have compassion,
that's right.
be able to connect it to your own life.
That's right.
Man, it's so easy. And if you just open your eyes,
That's
right?
right.
Because we all have, it could be the smallest thing, but we all have certainly, memories or incidents from our lives, a lot of times in childhood, that stick with us, where we feel like the outsider, we're put down. And it is on everyone if we want to evolve kind of and reach a higher plane um, as humans to not divorce ourselves from those feelings, but in fact to connect them to other people.
100%, Brent. I appreciate you saying that a lot. Is compassion and kindness and empathy. And you don't have to have that lived experience, those lived experiences to feel those things. And that comes across so wonderfully in your book because of how you frame it with yourself, and as a genderqueer queer person and my partner's a trans guy, right now we're sort of sitting in the mix and the messiness and the mud of, are we safe? What's happening? What kind of legislation is coming up next? And so just to have this beautiful reminder of like, oh, right, the artist that I'm most inspired by in the world actually gives a shit. and 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 like you said, the way Jen talks about it was very emotional and very transformative for me. So people watching and listening, if you're a Twin Peaks fan, you must go to that chapter immediately. Like, what are you waiting for? Read it, embrace it, and remember that you are loved and that there are a lot of people who are fixing their hearts, in process of fixing their hearts. And we can all work on fixing our hearts. None of us are perfect, but there are people who are doing that, who are sitting in compassion and empathy and kindness. And to me, that's a humanness, that's a human thing. And it's also a political thing. I think you kind of mentioned, like, is Lynch political in some of the things he's doing? Not really. But then, yes, actually, there's a place where it kind of it shifts, it turns over.
Mhm.
And, this is certainly an example of that. So, anyway, shout out Brent to your Fix Your Hearts or Die chapter. Total shout out. Very much appreciating it. Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, but I give all credit really to Jen
Mhm.
Lynch on that one because it was really, again, the stories that she shared that made it what it was.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Tell us something that an interview or a moment in the book that has really stuck with you, and maybe like in 10 years, you'll look at this book and go, oh, yeah, that thing. Like, is there something that really stands out for you?
You know, actually two things.
Mhm.
One is ultra specific and one is a little broader. Uh, One in talking to Bob Ingalls, and I'm sure this kind of detail was out there um, elsewhere, but I hadn't really absorbed it for whatever reason or thought paused to consider it. So Robert Bob Ingalls, who of course was a writer on Twin Peaks and then co-wrote Fire Walk with Me, talking to him, he mentioned sort of in passing um, that he and David would go golfing together, frequently. And I just never had thought of like David Lynch, the golfer. And that was so funny to me, right?
Love it. Love
So I was
it.
like, oh, what was his handicap and all this stuff.
Right.
So we went down like a little rabbit hole, and I'm sorry, folks. It's my eternal regret that there really wasn't room for like a separate subchapter on David as a golfer.
And David is a golfer. Yeah.
Um, but it was just so maybe unexpected, right?
Mhm.
And kind of different that I found that really amusing and lovely and something I'll always remember for sure.
Love that.
And then also, again, I have to say that I will remember and reflect upon, speaking to David Lynch's assistants.
Mm,
And I spoke to a number of them,
you did.
a quartet in particular for this book, Eric Crary, Mindy Ramaker, J.A. Singh, and Michael Burrell. And they were really, you know, they were generous with their time, but also I think because of their personal, like physical, actual
Mhm.
proximity to David, right?
Yeah.
Their perspectives were so illuminating and special and valuable to kind of what I was trying to convey a lot of times because yes, they could, particularly Michael, who was with David for, I want to say 12 plus years, up until his passing, he could confirm certain facts and details, right? Dates or any stuff like that. But also, they, in their own way, would be able to give a sense, a glimpse rather, into kind of his mindset,
Mm,
or their perspective, at least, of his mindset,
mm,
which I think is valuable. You're not ever going to necessarily get definitive answers to everything, but their perspectives and kind of some of the anecdotes that they share. Um, Jay mentions at one point, like Nolan Ryan being a childhood hero of his. And so he kind of offhandedly mentions that, not really thinking that David Lynch would know who Nolan Ryan, this Hall of Fame baseball pitcher, was. And, David totally knew, right? And was like, oh, yeah, the Ryan Express. So stuff like that, that like has a special, warm place in my heart as
mhm.
well. Because they had that personal connection to him. And
Yeah.
folks will enjoy, I think, Mindy shares some of the dad jokes that David
So,
really enjoyed as well.
mhm, mhm. Yes, though, yes, we're not going to say them because you're going to read them and like love and enjoy those moments.
Yes. Yeah. Those were great. And again, it was always my intention to talk to those folks, a number of whom, many of whom I had connected with throughout the years, kind of
Hmm.
arranging interviews with Lynch for different publications. Um, but I knew, I wanted very much to interview David for this book, and he had agreed to an interview before, sadly, he passed away. We were kind of out
Hmm.
for scheduling on that. But the reason that I knew that speaking to his assistants would be so valuable is because I didn't want to ask David, well, on this date, this was happening, or,
Right, right.
like
Like,
process questions or date questions.
no.
One, total waste of time, that you would be granted. But also, I knew like that's not the way his brain works,
That's
right?
not, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So them being able to kind of like, yes, confirm a few details, but also really give a sense of, um, you know, kind of particular feelings attached
Mm.
to certain periods of time was so valuable.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for those answers. They're so great, and I just keep thinking about the golfing too. Like I was like, okay, yeah, this is golfing. Um, it what is the one of your highlight? Just as we're beginning to wrap up, like what is a highlight for you in his career as a performer, as an actor? Like as
Mhm.
you were going through all of this, maybe you had an idea in mind before. Did it change? Like what's a highlight for you?
Yeah, it was. I was really interested, I would say, or something that I reflected on and maybe wasn't expecting to was his some of his performance work for his website, right, which he launched in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, when you look back on stuff like Dumbland, which was this shockwave animated, cartoon, very aggressive. Like he's voicing these assaultive characters. And that website work was a way for him, I think, to express elements of his personality that he could not otherwise express.
Uh-huh.
Because at that point, he was David Lynch, auteur filmmaker, right?
Uh-huh.
Like he had followed this path and achieved considerable acclaim. And David was never going to be the guy who was out actively seeking a bunch of work as an actor,
Hmm.
even though he very easily could have been. And as I make clear in the book, he could have done that with voice work.
Yeah.
Um, and people would not have batted an eye. He could have sprinkled in, cameos as the eccentric neighbor or whatever, and people would have loved it, right? His fans
100.
would have loved it. Other people would have been like, "Oh, that's weird. That's cool. That's interesting."
Uh-huh.
He didn't do that. And yet, as I touch on several times in the book, I think it is entirely reasonable that and I wanted to sort of underscore this point that just because David Lynch was, so brilliant in so many ways, he was also absolutely human. And we all struggle
Hmm.
with,
Yeah.
oh, I'm only known for this one thing, or we wear faces, right? We wear
Yeah.
masks. But at a certain point, we worry, or if you're a little bit, even a little bit kind of like introspective or analytical, you feel like, wow, the wholeness of me is not represented by X or Y, by what people see, by what I'm known for, by my job. And and I do think, again, even though um, so much of his creative output was other stuff, it was the films, it was Twin Peaks, it was his fine art. I think performance came to serve as this pressure release valve, and that was nowhere was that more evident than kind of in the website work.
Mm.
Um, and so it was really a lot of fun and interesting to sort of unpack that and examine kind of the differences between um, sort of Dumbland and then something like Out Yonder, which is hugely representative of another part of his personality. He appears with that with his son Austin,
Hmm.
but it's a very quiet, reserved character, and quite unlike kind of anything else we see from him as a performer.
Hmm.
So that was all stuff that I knew about. I mean, I was a member of davidlynch.com at the time, and I vacuumed that up.
Hmm.
But it was interesting to revisit it and make those connections, as I sort of
Hmm.
pieced together the timeline and really more deeply considered some of the ways in which they fit together, right? They complemented one another, but also contrasted. That was something that was interesting.
That's amazing. And I love thinking about the kind of split off parts of ourselves that we show in all these different areas, right? Like what kind of performance am I doing when I'm teaching, or what kind of performance am I doing when I'm whatever at a faculty meeting or with a client? We're always in these kind of different ways of being and performing. And I really love how you were talking about an that the performance part and the acting part for him is another way to show some other of those parts that are not the ones that we might be the most used to. And it's an opportunity to find a more of a holistic uh, a, um, avenue with which to see all of the humanness, the holistic humanness that exists in all of us. And I definitely see that. Was rewatching the scene from some of the scenes from Lucky last night, and I was just like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." I got emotional, but also I was laughing about his, turtle or whatever. Like, it is these
Tortoise.
tortoise. Oh,
Tortoise.
excuse me, tortoise. Tortoise. This is very
Right.
important. This is very important. Tortoise.
Yes.
And just the multifaceted, multi-layered, multi-galactic cosmos way that that Lynch shows up in all of these different parts of his career, and you represent them all really well. And as you said, you probably have missed some. Like I don't know. You did an amazing, thorough job, but like, who really knows? And the
Right.
question of like, was he in Lost Highway? Like, who? There's also mythology around what he's in and not in, and cameos and whatever. So it's still fun. There's still mystery and unknown, even though you've done such a great job of the chronology. And again, I just want to say, listeners, if you're like me and you're a fan, but you don't know a lot of these things and you haven't seen them, it doesn't matter. it also, you don't have to read it from beginning to end. I hope that's okay. I'm saying that, Brent, because it's chronological, but you can jump around. Like, oh, I kind of want to watch Lucky again. Let me like revisit that chapter and then go there, or watch Lucky and then read the chapter. I think it has this really nice watch along as you like, come and go quality to it. And it's anchored in such beautiful, like I said, analysis and your expertise working in the entertainment industry for so long. Um, and so my last question is, how, if at all, how has your relationship with his work shifted from the beginning of writing this book until now that it's out and about in the world?
I'd say it's become even more meaningful, which is hard to fathom because as I touch on in kind of the prologue, it's like Twin Peaks was the bomb that went off in my head, right? Like as a teenager, it was, oh, here's this murder mystery. Maybe I'll watch that. And I watched the pilot and my brain just melted out of my head or whatever. And to a kid who was kind of like a little bit in his own head, it was the depth of feeling and the variety of feeling that immediately made it so distinct to me, right? Like, and it made me want to try to unpack that sense of feeling and absolutely kind of put me on the path to a career in arts and entertainment journalism and film
Mm,
criticism specifically.
mm,
Um, because I wanted to try to understand how like something could be both funny and unnerving at the same time.
mm-hmm.
And so his work uh, has always been so important to me, and um, yet like I always have had probably a little bit of an imposter syndrome and shied away from tackling something like this comprehensive and difficult. It was absolutely career highlights to interview him all the times I did and get to kind of write
Mm-hmm.
profiles about his work and him for different outlets. Um, but uh, and even having a keen sense of like, okay, he put me on this path, and I love his work so much. Um, to your question, it's become kind of like even more meaningful because, tackling a project like this, you meet so many like-minded people and you
Mm.
get a sense of just how many lives he touched through his
Yeah,
work.
that's right.
And the beautiful thing, and something I've realized about the art that I most respond to is, and I'm not saying like I only, love or respond to the music or films of good people, good and morally just people. But in thinking about, again, what I most respond to, those fandoms tend to be people that also sort of pay it forward, like that they reflect the spirit
Mm,
of the creator. And that's absolutely the case with David Lynch. I'm a big U2 fan, and I think their music reflects a lot of positive values, and they're very honest about grappling with self-doubt. And in a similar but different way, like David's work again turns it turns on so many people to their own artistic impulses,
mhm.
and then talking to them for this book and reflecting upon that, and meeting other fans of Twin Peaks and David Lynch, um, like you don't really have a bad experience when you meet those
Yeah,
people. Like,
right.
you just meet
Yeah,
someone and you're like,
yeah.
and I think I mention it
Cool.
in the book, it's like this common language, right? It's a lingua franca.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
oh, I feel seen or I feel
Mm-hmm.
accepted,
Yeah.
and maybe the world isn't such a terrible place.
Thank you.
You feel that way at least for a little bit, and that's something we could all use more of.
Hell
Uh,
yeah.
and so, but it was realizing that in particular because again, because I stand sort of outside the circle of kind of like fan theory and plot deconstruction with a lot of David's work. I'd maybe forgotten that or not learned fully that lesson that, oh, here are all these other people who, worked with him and enjoy his work. And man, there's such beauty in these people.
Hmm.
Just all of them.
Hmm.
I can literally say didn't have, a bad experience interviewing people, didn't have and haven't had bad experiences meeting folks. And that like, I mean, that's emotional to me.
Yeah,
That sits in my heart, and I'm like, um, it calms the noise of the world a little bit, maybe.
it definitely does. We need it so much right now.
Yeah.
So much. And it's hopeful. I think it's like it just provides a lot of hope that there are people like you, like us, like or whoever that are artists who are mm, like filled with just like a lot of love and care and empathy and all the things we were talking about earlier too. And you know, you bringing this into the world, birthing this, if you will, birthing the dreamer's path is part of that, is bringing more of the humanness to this man who has changed all of our lives from, like you said, many, many years ago. You know, I mean, I think so many people in fandom can relate to that. Like, this person has changed our lives, and this is more of his humanness and more of his quirkiness and more of his, parts of himself that he gets to show through this and that you're highlighting and lifting up in this book. And so basically you kick ass, Brent, and you're amazing. And and I know also, so we had the pleasure of having doing a panel last year, I think it was at Bookfest, shout out, about folks who have written things on Lynch. And so check that out. I'll put that also in the thing. It's very cute, and we had a lot of great conversation. And when you buy the Dreamer's Path, which you will, and you will add to cart immediately, and I'll put the links, it's on Amazon and Tucker DS Press. You can also, don't forget, if you're coming the way of Twin Peaks Day, you're going to be, let me get this right, Brent, you're going to be at the North Bend Trading Company on Friday, February 20th at 1 o'clock. Is this right?
Uh, yes.
Yes. Okay.
I was checking
Friday.
myself.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're getting the information correct. And I will also put this in the notes. Friday, February 20th at 1 o'clock. Girl, that's soon. That's what day is it? That's like
Today's Tuesday the 17th. So yeah,
okay, you
yeah,
must
end of this week.
yeah, you're about to head out. So this Friday, 1 o'clock, and you'll be signing the books. Please head out. It's gonna be a great event overall. There's gonna be wonderful, wonderful things happening, including Harley Payton. Shout out Harley Payton, who I think is going to be on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday, 11 a.m. at the North Bend Theater. John Thorne and Scott Ryan are going to be talking with him, and it's just not to be missed. And also, what's not to be missed is 1 o'clock Friday with you, Brent, at the North Bend Trading Company. And are you going to do like a little reading as well, or like what are you thinking?
There may be yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a little Q&A and then
cute.
maybe a little short reading. I need to figure out what I'm going to read then. I should do that.
Well, you have lots of choices because there's a lot of amazing gems in here. Also, I forgot to show, like, I'm totally representing. I have this great Lynch shirt on today.
Oh,
So,
very nice.
representing Dreamer's Path in my costume design.
Nice.
So, anything else that you want to mention, Brent, before we wrap up?
No, this has been a beautiful chat, Em. I really appreciate it. And
Fun.
yeah, like I said, I'm excited to get this out there into the world and hopefully people respond to it because I think it's something that again, it has both serious and comedic elements. And man, if there's a way to pay homage and respect to David Lynch, that's better. I can't really think of one, right? Um,
Absolutely.
both coexisted in his work, and so I think that was part of the joy of writing this. I hope
Hmm.
people enjoy that.
Absolutely. And they will. They will. It's fabulous. Thank you so much, Brent. You're amazing.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you. Thank you.